Thank you, everybody. Let's give Kevin and Arts Emerson another round of applause for putting this together. As we know, I think Arts Emerson is taking a lot of risks with what they're bringing to stage. And David Dower, Kevin, Polly, I mean, just everyone has been so wonderful that when I approached them and I said, I'd like to bring Walter's paintings to Emerson. And they said, Walter the writer? And I said, yeah, I'd like to bring his paintings to Emerson. And they were like, perfect. And the next thing I know, we had this entire week planned, not only highlighting the visual arts, but also what Walter is more known for, obviously his writing, his movies. So you will be able to see Devil in a Blue Dress this week, and a few, and Always Outnumbered, I think, is the other movie we're doing, along with some of his other stuff. The big thing that I want to push for this week is the Black Box Theater, which is going to be made to be Walter's brain. And so I definitely suggest that you come and you check it out. You'll be able to see a lot of his paintings, his drawings, his works, all of his books that he's published. You'll just get to see a lot of the work in his entirety. So please continue to join us for this week of events. Urban Mail is a program that we do at Future Boston Alliance to highlight men of color in Boston, artists and entrepreneurs, and really give them a platform to not only meet one another, but for people to see them. And we really try to help make the invisible visible. And so we've been doing the Urban Mail now for a little over a year and a half. And we normally have it on a weekday evening over at Back Bay Social Club with a panel of men of color, and we talk about different different aspects of life. The first time we talked about freedom, we talked about women. It's just really a place for us to come together and see one another. So when Walter was coming, I thought, what a great opportunity for us to sit down and sort of have these this conversation with such a well-known artist and author of color. So with that, we're going to get started. Thank you, you guys. Another round of applause. So for those of you who don't know, I actually don't have your bio printed up, Walter, so I'm just going to wing it. Okay. So Walter is a really well-known author. He's published over 50 books, several movies, plays, and he's also a really awesome guy. And I'm sure he's won a lot of awards, but I don't have the list in front of me. And I've been lucky enough to have him as a mentor and friend for several years. So thank you, Walter. What I first want to talk to you about is growing up.
One second.
Yes.
Kevin, I really need that water. Yeah. If I make it talk.
I got it.
Okay, you can go on.
Thank you.
I know what's going to happen. I need water.
No problem. No problem. Do you want me to I'll just talk slow.
No.
Growing up in LA, you were first a computer programmer, which I think a lot of people might not know. You really didn't start out your adult life as an author, and I would just love to hear a little bit about what the journey was, to get you from a kid growing up in LA to becoming a computer programmer, back when you were poking the things in the...
So how I became a programmer?
No, just what was that journey from childhood LA to...
Well, I'm from California, so like if you're in California, I try to tell people that, because people in California are different. I really don't know why. But like, if you run into a woman, it doesn't really matter her race or background or religion, but if you run into a woman who is 80 years old and she just retired her job, and you say, what are you going to do now? Anyplace else, I'm going to spend time with my grandchildren, take a vacation, I'm going to kick that no good husband out, whatever they're going to say. But in LA, she answers, well, I think I'm going to become a ballet dancer. I'm very limber, I can touch my toes. I'm going to become a ballet dancer. So in LA, California, you just kind of do things, you keep doing them, and there's all the time in the world because there's no seasons, so nothing ever passes. And then finally, one day something happens. I'd gone to college and studied political science. And
and I went to graduate school. I was in a PhD program for political theory, and I realized one day that I would never have the job that my professor had, but if I had that job, I wouldn't want it, and so I quit, and I went back to being a computer programmer. And one day I wrote a sentence on hot, sticky days in southern Louisiana. The fire ants swarmed. I was about 34, 35. And I said, oh, that's a good sentence. I could be a writer. I think I'll be a writer. Because
that is a good sentence.
And I knew it was fiction because I'd never been to Louisiana. I'd never seen a fire ant. I said, wow, I'm a fiction writer. And that was it. There wasn't a whole bunch of direction. The idea where you're going to plan, you're going to come this, you're going to do that. I didn't have it. I know some people who do, and it usually works out not so well, for them. The thing I keep on thinking about talking to people here is about capitalism, because capitalism dominates our lives. And any plan that we have that fits in with a corporation, a company, a profession, or an ideology, we end up working for somebody else, and never going anywhere. There's maybe one person who works for him or herself, the president, and they don't think they are. But it was very, very simple. I started writing. I didn't expect to be a writer. What I expected was I'd write a finished short story, and I kept writing. And one day, someone said, "We should send that out." And I sent it out, and nobody liked that one. And so I wrote another one, and then I said, "Oh, we'll publish this." And I went, "Oh, so now I really am a writer." And that was it. I wish that was more interesting.
I'm sure those years of you doing that, there's a lot of interesting stories in there. I just don't know the questions to ask to get you to tell them.
Yes, fine.
But so, but I know that they're good. And so, did you go? What was the first book you published? I mean, did you go from Fire Ants to Devil in a Blue Dress, or was it?
Well, I wrote Gone Fishing, but nobody wanted to publish it. That was an interesting notion because it was in 1986 or 7. I'd written it, and I sent it out to people, and they said, it's very good writing, but it's not commercial.
And why was that?
Well, commercial meant that white people don't read about black people, black women don't like black men, and black men don't read. And because it was about 2 young black men coming of age who would read the book. They were wrong. I mean, they were right because they made that decision. They were wrong because, black women do like black men. But,
and black men do read.
And, actually black men read fiction a lot less back then. But that's because fiction lied about that. Like that you have fiction about black men, like you're either a caddy or a pimp or a shoe shine. There's something on the side. I mean, something may be something very interesting, but something on the side. And real black characters hadn't really been developed in American fiction, very rarely, white or black. And certainly not heroic characters. And so, but I used to say when I would do readings, the first 3 years, guys would come in, I said, "You must think this is a videotape, because that's across the hall." But and actually sometimes I did, but then after a while, I built up a big audience of black male readers, and I have one today, which is great. And now there are a lot of, not a lot, but many black male writers who tell stories that black male America can identify with.
Yes, which actually leads into my next question. I've heard this a few times when we've been out together, and I think I mentioned it the other night, where black men will come up to you and thank you for how you write about black men, for the characters that you portray, for the different dimensions you give them. And is that something that you do, you think, because you're a black writer, or because you're a good writer that writes about black people?
Well, yeah, I mean, how do you answer that question? The idea is that I write about, I write the stories that I want to tell. And, my heroes as a kid were, my father and his friends, these black men, who I found very wonderful, and, all the stories about black people, I mean, maybe they were true about other people, but they weren't true about my father and his friends. And I find them, kind of really wonderful. And it's like anybody else writing about a life that they're experiencing and that they love, you know. It's just that it wasn't completely recognizable to an audience, especially with readers. I mean, I'll give you an example. I've written, Debbie doesn't do it anymore. And one of the chapters, Debbie, it's 5 o'clock in the morning. She's visiting the white mother of her dead husband, and she's doing her makeup. Her makeup's in the trunk of the car, so she's going back and forth with the makeup. The police come and arrest her and put her in handcuffs. And my editor says, well, Walter, you have to change this part. And I went, why? And he goes, well, you know, the police would never put a woman in handcuffs. And I said, well, they did it to Skip Yates. Well, he's not a woman. I said, well, they did it to the little girl in Miami.
Right.
And he stopped talking to me. But the thing is that there's just a notion, like, I wasn't thinking about that. I wasn't even being political. I was just like, you know, if they stop this black woman in this white neighborhood in front of this white woman's house, putting stuff in her trunk, they're going to know that it's not like they suspect that she's burglaring. She's burglaring this house, and she's going to get, you know, she have to put her in handcuffs, so we have to arrest her. That's the rules.
Right.
When you find a criminal. You know? And I think that just writing like that, you know, I mean, you know, a lot of people get upset about it, and a lot of people say, well, God, yeah, finally somebody said that, you know.
Right, right. Do you mind being considered a black author? Like when people, you know, say Walter Mosley, the black author, is that something that you think is an example of, you know, we're still being classified, or like, why isn't Walter Mosley just the great author?
Well, you know, I told you about the op-ed piece, right? Yeah, that's maybe I didn't. I wrote an op-ed piece a while ago, you know, 4 or 5 months ago. Well, it's never come out anywhere because everybody said no. But it was like an op-ed piece, and the op-ed piece was, I mean, it's a long piece, but it ends up saying, if you believe in Christ and his edicts, then you're a Christian. If you believe in the existence of race, then you're a racist. You know? So if you call somebody a black person or a white person or whatever, then you're a racist. Because there are no white people and black people. I mean, like, it's ridiculous. I mean, to say there's white people and black, I mean, you know, I mean, just on the surface of it, it's ridiculous. And then as you go deeper into it, it's ridiculous. And nobody would publish it because in order to publish it, they would have to accept the fact that they were racist. And they say, well, I'm not a racist. Well, do you believe that black people exist or that you're a white person? Well, say yes. Well, then of course you're a racist because you're not a white person and you believe it. You know, I mean, it's simple. And so on that level, you know.
Well, it sounds simple. I mean, I think, you know, and I mean, I'm sure everyone in this audience gets it, but you know, to a certain extent, I mean, I'm sure that there is some, well, you know, when we talk about white privilege, right, we really feel like that exists and that it's real.
Well, I'm not just talking about white people. I mean, black people, brown people.
Well, right, when we say Black Lives Matter,
everybody believes it. They believe that race exists. And they can't get out of it. I can't either.
Right.
But it's still the only reason race exists is because you believe in it. The only reason that racism exists is because you believe in it. You know, and just because we all believe in it and we can't get out of it doesn't mean it's like people having AIDS. You know, it's like there's big AIDS epidemic, and you know, people say, listen, it's happening. It's happening. Don't be acting like it's not happening.
Right.
It's, you know, and it's like it's the same thing. It's happening. You know, and why is it happening? It's because you're having sex. Well, I'm not starting having sex. So, okay, but it's still happening. Like, let's be clear. You're going to have sex, and it's happening. So. You know, I mean, it's a simple notion.
Right.
You know, and, you know, you can say, you know, listen, saying Black Lives Matter is an important thing. I'm certainly not against that. But I'm saying black is still a thing of racism. Mm-hmm. And it's you know, and, you know, listen, we weren't black in Africa. They weren't white in Europe.
That's right.
You know, and so it's only here, you know, in colonization. And so the thing is so, you know, when you ask me about it, yes, I'm happy. You know, listen, if somebody says I'm famous or good at anything, and if people are going to buy my books, I'm going to make money, I'm going to be happy. But at the same time, there's a criticism of that, so it's not like one side or the other.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I'm a racist, but I understand that, and I wish you did. I mean, not you, but I wish the other person I'm talking to does, And it's a very, very difficult thing. I could never get that published. It's amazing. I could never get it published, and by anyone. I suppose if I went to the Ku Klux Klan, they would say, okay, we agree, But
although deconstructing their whiteness, right? They might not want to do that.
There's that great thing where when they used to have real public access television, which they don't have anymore. There's this guy, I don't know, he must have been in the White Citizen Council, and he was, had a suit that he got from Sears. He put it in the washing machine, put it back on again, and he was talking to this kid. He was wearing a white kid with t-shirts and pimples. He says, "So what's your problem in school, Johnny?" And Johnny says, "Well, they let they went to the white kids, and they said we couldn't wear the Bart Simpson T-shirt, but the black kids could wear the black Bart T-shirt." And the guy looked at him and he said, "So they won't let they let the black kids wear the black Bart T-shirt, but they wouldn't let you wear the American Bart T-shirt." And I was just like, I was so happy to hear it. It's like, because that's what people think. It's like, if you're white, you're an American. And if you're not white, you're not American. They still think it. It's just unconscious. It's kind of but it's good to know that. It's good to know what people are thinking. And it's good to tell them what they're thinking. So, oh, you're being a racist now because you're calling me black, and look at me. What the fuck is wrong with you? You're calling me black, right? I said, well, you're calling me black. I said, well, what about my friend Malia here? She black? Oh, yeah, she's black. I said, well, yeah, okay. All right.
I would just like to say he does say this to people. Anyone really, that might get it wrong. But I love it, and I love actually one of the things that I think, as much as I love your fiction, one of the things that I love the most is the space you hold in politics, and is how you use your voice to push some pretty radical notions. And I want you to talk a little bit about how you came to creating the monographs that you write, and if those are something that you really just put out for yourself, or if there's something that you were hoping would catch on and would you would be able to sell in the same way as like an easy book.
Oh no, it's really, it's so interesting. I was talking to a journalism class the other day, and when I was talking to them, it's like, there's much more truth in fiction than there is in nonfiction, right? Because in fiction, you create a character and you develop them, and they can go anywhere, but they live within the sphere of the fiction. There's nothing outside of it. But when you write nonfiction, if you're from the left and you write a Reagan biography, Reagan's not going to come out too good in that. But if you're from the right and you write a Reagan biography, he's going to be the greatest president who ever lived, other than Lincoln maybe, the other Republican. And it's like there's that notion that in order to tell the truth, it's a really very difficult thing, and so you can what you write. My few political monographs, you have to take a point of view that's really that just talks about the thing itself, not about people or ideas or histories. So I said one of the things I wrote was what next is, and what next was it was published on the day that we invaded Iraq, and I wrote it because I was talking about our fallacious war on terrorism. It was a false war. And so, but I didn't want to just say that. I didn't want to come from some kind of leftist point of view. So what I said was, the president says that we should kill all terrorists. I'm in complete agreement. We should kill all terrorists. all of them. The ones in the Pentagon, the ones in Miami, the ones, you know, like not just the ones we don't like, you know, because a terrorist, it's like, you know, you might like a murderer. You say, well, I like that murderer. I say, yeah, but he's still a murderer. So like, if we're going to execute all murderers, we execute him. If there's a woman who does it, if there's a child who does it, we kill all of them. You know, and of course, nobody's ever going to do that. You know, and it's very important for me to be able to have that conversation, because otherwise, as you live in capitalism, you know, they'll tell you, so well, we can make money off the mysteries. We can't make money off these, so we're not publishing this because, you know, they're not. I said, well, just publish less of them. That's all, man. You know. And so, yeah, but no, we don't want to do that. You know, so I had to go off and do it on my own. You know, but that was okay. You know, who cares? You know, it's important to tell the truth. In the first book, my first political book, I think if you really want to have a big impact on your life, the important thing is to tell one truth once a day. And a different one every day. One truth once a day. You know, because we lie all the time. Almost everything we do, almost everything we say, almost everything we're involved in is a lie. You know? I watched my friend talking to his kids, you know, about drugs. You know, I was like, so why? I was like, but you're just lying, man. I remember when we were kids. Who was dealing drugs? Things are different now. Why? You know, what's different? You know, I mean, but to tell the truth once a day, in a place that matters. Yes, when I was young, you know, he says to his kid, I dealt some drugs, but I think that was wrong and I could have gotten in a lot of trouble. You know, this kid can make up his own mind about it. You know, but instead, you know, it's like, you know, or if you love somebody, if you hate somebody, if you have an idea about the world, you know. But that's why, right? Because you can't really do that in fiction. You know, it has to be kind of a nonfiction thing. But it's hard to argue. I mean, you might say, I'm not going to do it. You know, but you can't say it's untrue because, you know, you're just saying something.
And keeping on the monographs, because again, I know you know a lot about your regular books, and I'm sure people are going to be asking questions about their favorite pieces of your work. You wrote one, I want to say it was something about like throwing off the wet blanket, 12 steps to throwing off the wet blanket of capitalism or something like that, and you really went in hardcore on American capitalism and really us all sort of being responsible for keeping it, you know, alive, and that we need to reject the notion. And I was hoping you could get a little bit into your thing. Am I going too far back?
No.
Oh, okay.
I do forget that it's 12 steps, so I do forget the rest of the title.
But it was like a 12-step program to get us off of American capitalism.
Well, you know, I think I've been thinking about when I talk to students here at Emerson that, you know, that we have to begin by saying that, you know, there's a capitalist critique to whatever you do. You know, there's the idea of living in America is America's like the most perfectly capitalist country. I mean, like, you know, if you're old enough, you'll remember that we used to worry about Japan. You know, Japan is going to take us over economically, but now all of a sudden Japan is no longer. I mean, it's in the game, but not that seriously. And then, you know, people were worried about Russia. You know, people worried about China. You know, but the truth is, we're so good at it. We're like the best at it. You know, and capitalism completely governs our lives, everything that we do. And a perfect capitalism is the production line, and the production line, you know, is specialization. And that's who we are. So like, as a mystery writer, you know, I would go to my editor and say, well, I'm going to write a book, you know, about the blues, or I'm going to write, you know, a book about love, or I'm going to write a book about deconstructionist deconstructionist historian. And he would say, no, you can't do that. You're a mystery writer. You have to write mysteries. You can only write mysteries. We can only sell mysteries. And you know, and it's, but as you know, the production line works. One day they close the production line. You know, so like one day your mysteries don't sell anymore. They don't care. They say, well, your books don't sell anymore. You know, so move along. You know, and this is an important thing to remember in life, because we specialize, you know, and we become completely warped. You know, like putting the left front tire on the Pinto. That's what we're doing. And then, and when that job is over, our lives are over. You know, and I think that And that was, for me, capitalism is very simple. I'm not really sure, it's just like calling people, everybody a racist. I don't really know how to get out of it. But I do know that we have to face that this is our biggest problem. If you understand, like, there's socialism and there's capitalism. There isn't. And the socialism and the capitalism are so specialized that they don't pay attention to human beings. Like, you know, I mean, people say that we're social animals. That might be true to agree, but, you know, I mean, bees are social animals, wasps, some, you know, migrating geese, schooling fish. But, you know, we don't work well together. And, you know, the queen and a beehive works just as hard as any member of that hive. That's how it works. You know, everybody does their job. They only do their job. They don't compete. They don't fight. They just do their job. You know, that one bee doesn't look at us and say, hey, I got more pollen than you. They don't do that. They just work. We're not like that. Okay, so that's one thing. And on the social side, on the capitalist side, they think that wealth is infinite. There's all the wealth in the world. But the truth is, all wealth, I mean, any person who teaches economics today, all wealth is based on labor. And so you have a finite number of laborers. So let's say everybody in the world did 100,000 euros worth of labor. You know, like you have a couple of billion workers, 100,000 euros each worth of labor. Well, that's fine, except for there's a guy over here who's worth 1 billion euros. And there's another guy, and another guy. I met a woman the other night who's worth 38 billion euros, you know, from the Walmart family. But for every thing that these people have over 100,000 euros, that takes away from the people on the far left. They go down and down and down and down and down and down and down. And so by the time, you know, the two meet, over 100,000, under 100,000, there's a lot more money in play than it truly exists in labor. And that's what we are in debt. You know, like Tennessee Ernie Ford used to say, another day older and deeper in debt. Our whole life is like based on that. And so there's a kind of a, so you have capitalism, which is destroying our value, and we have socialism, which misinterprets our goals. And the thing is, like, we can't live in either one. We have to get rid of the isms and just have like a regular everyday life. I wrote a whole book about this called Folding the Red into the Black. No, it's not published. I sent it back to me. And if I send it out to the leftists, they say, you're too hard on the leftists. I send it out to the capitalists, you're too hard on the capitalists. But the truth is that if you, for a minute, let's get off the production line. So I'm just going to write this thing, and I'm not going to make any money. It's not going to be do anything for me. It's much better because you're able to think through it. You're able to think through the arguments. You're able to think through the life. You're able to come to a place to say, we're human beings, and human beings need to live in a very different kind of world than bees do, you know, and that capitalists do. Bees and capitalists. You know, capitalism is so crazy that I was at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm at a drugstore in Los Angeles. I was going in to get a Coke. 3 young guys, black guys, standing out in front, selling candy bars out of boxes for half the price that they cost in the place. But they're very furtive because it's against the law for them to do this. But this job is because they're competing against the drugstore. But the drugstore owns the legal system, and so they've made these guys illegal. But these guys are the original capitalists. They're mercantile capitalists. That's how capitalists used to work. It's so bad that the isms all become fascism in the end. They're fascist in their own thing. The corporate fascists have put all the independent business capitalists, all the mercantile capitalists out of business, and says you can only work for me, you know, which means you can only borrow from me because you know because I have more money than you do, and so your money becomes my money in living color. Mine is yours. What's yours is mine.
Do you ever get pushback? I mean, I know you say, like, you know, this will never get published or this book will never, but do people, you know, ever come and say, like, listen, you got a good thing going here. Why don't you just chill out a little bit on your political views or on, you know, the statements you make?
People are like afraid of me. I never really considered
I don't know why either, Walter.
So they don't. I was talking to the head of one of the big houses, a woman who's the head of one of the big houses some years ago, and I said,
I was, arguing. I said, there are no people of color working in publishing. What the fuck is up with that? You're so liberal. Your son goes out with a Puerto Rican girl. What's wrong? How come you can't hire a Puerto Rican? And so she said, and she saw us talking about black people, so she said, listen, we try to hire black people, and they just don't come. They just don't, we can't get them. Why do you think it is? I said, well, I think it's because you're a racist.
I don't know why people are scared.
I honestly said this. I said it, she's a short little woman. And I said, because you're a racist. I looked down. You're a racist. And she said, and she got mad. And I said, I know you're mad, but let me prove to you that you're a racist. And she said, she didn't say anything, but I said, look, in the basement of your building, I've never been in the basement of a building, but I know the basement of all publishing buildings. The basement of your building is a whole bunch of Dominicans and Puerto Ricans, right? But you're not talking to me about how you can get Hispanics to work in publishing. You got all these people already. They're down in your basement. You could just lift them up. And you don't do that. She has not talked to me since that day. but if she did, she wouldn't argue. She just told me she's not publishing my book, which is just fine. Because there's a moment where you feel like you have to tell the truth, And most people in most businesses, in most things that they do, they get mired in, well, I'm a nonprofit, well, I'm a semi-profit, well, I'm actually a profit-making thing. I have to watch out who I insult, who I talk against, I understand that, I do. But on the other hand, is if you never do it, then it never changes.
That's right.
And if it never changes, then so what the fuck good was it in the first place?
That's right.
It's
right.
like, it's not. I mean, it's not worthwhile if your life is not going to change. If you're listening to hip hop music and you say, well, that's just trash. I said, man, that's what they said about us, right?
That's right.
And they're actually talking about things happening, So, but listen to the way they talk about women. They always do that. Listen to the way they talk about women. Say, man, I know how you deal with women. Come on now. It's like it's different. You know what I mean? It's like and it's important to be able to change and to be able to be flawed while you're making changes. And I'm not trying to pretend like I'm perfect, but I do write these books and I do send them to people and they do reject them.
And at this point, do you cry now? Or do you get upset? Or are you like, fuck this person or whatever?
Well, I have a very particular thing. Years ago, I published on fishing with Paul Coates' Black Classic Press. And Paul was the head of he's Ta-Nehisi Coates' father. And he's had Black Classic Press for almost 40 years now. He was the head of Panthers in the late 60s, early 70s. And we're the best of friends. So whenever I can't publish a book, I go to Paul. I can't publish my book. He said, oh, that's okay, Walter, we publish it. The book we're publishing here, The Graphomaniac's Primer, Paul's doing it, because, other people say, what? That doesn't make any sense. I said, well, it does. It's just that you're not smart enough to understand the sense that it makes. I don't say that. I didn't say that. I said it. I didn't say that. Yeah.
You did say that.
No, when me and somebody else ever have the same thought, I always say, mediocre minds think alike.
I love it. So, yes, let's get into your Graphomania's primer and why you're here. And we talked about it for a while that I wanted your thinking to be in Boston. We don't have a lot of the conversations around deconstructing whiteness, deconstructing blackness. I think Boston has a very unique dance with race and class. And I know you lived here for a while and left. Another great talent we lost who was here for a while. But now you're back with Graphomania's Primer, which is something like you guys have never seen before. I don't want to give it away because I want people to come to the book launch, but why don't you just tell us a little bit about how you realized that you were a graphomaniac?
So you don't want to give it away, but I can.
Yeah.
All right, let's just try to figure that out. I draw a lot. I want you to understand, I
have no native talent in drawing. I don't know how to do shadows. I don't know how to do three-point perspective. I don't know how to draw the human form. I can't do anything. But for the last 52 years, I've been drawing. I'm drawing. And if you do anything for 52 years, you develop a voice. No matter how bad that voice is, you develop a voice. You know, no matter what your mental deficiency is, you develop something. And so one day I was thinking to myself that I want to write like a series of lowercase a's right along the top of a sheet of paper. Tiny little lowercase a's just hugging the top. And then under that, I'd write another line of lowercase a's hugging that from one side to the other, and then from top to bottom. So when I finish, I have a whole page, no spaces, all lowercase a's. And I did it. And I said, wow, that's so cool. I wonder what B's would look like. I did a bunch of B's, and I did a bunch of C's, and I did a bunch of D's, and E's, and F's. And I thought, this is like a graphomaniac. Because graphomaniacs are people who can't stop writing. And my drawings have a lot to do with writing. And so I said, so this could be like the graphomaniac's primer. And so I keep doing it. And I got into the uppercase. I got through the Z's. And I'm looking at the uppercase now. And I'm thinking, for a graphomaniac, this wouldn't only be a primer, but it would also be a memoir. Because all these people write memoirs. And they're like all the same, right? My father did rape me or he didn't. And, my mother, did love me or she didn't. And people did like me or they didn't. But then I found myself. I gave up drinking, and now I'm fine. I gave up my sex addiction, and now I'm fine. And it's good. And you could be like me. And I don't know. It's like, why am I reading this, And so I thought, what would a plumber do if they had a memoir? Well, they would write about plumbing. There'd be pictures of pipes and stuff, and they would talk about levels of water. It would be kind of interesting, right? And so I said, this is like a memoir for a writer. And so I started writing tiny little essays and the things I had written before, and then Z, 0, 0, 0, cent sign, and then some other stuff, and then some drawings, and somewhere in the middle of it, I went, wow, I'm acting like I'm just writing a joke, graphomaniac's primer, but really, I am a graphomaniac. And this is my memoir. And it's like for real. It was so wonderful to realize, because my father was in the Army, 1943, got drafted. And he went to, someplace in Alabama or something, to get trained. And there was another dude there, another black guy, who says, Mosley, I don't like this. I'm going to get out of here. And my father said, look, once Uncle Sam got you, he ain't never letting you go. And he said, no, he's going to let me go. And so he started doing this crazy stuff. Every night, all night long, he'd be going through, marching, calling out things. If they asked him to dig a hole, 4 feet by 4, he'd dig it 6 by 6, and he'd always be marching and stuff like that. And they did everything. They put him in the stockade. They put him in the mental ward. They put him on trial. And then during the trial, he started, 1, 2, 3, and marching. And they finally said, okay, forever. And they let him out. And so, my father was still under, basic training. And the guy didn't leave. They let him out, but he didn't leave. He stayed in the little town. And every time my father would go into the little town, he'd say, hey, Mosley, hey, I got out, didn't I? Yeah. They thought I was crazy. Watch. And he'd be like, and my father said, yeah, they let you out. You're really crazy. And I realized that story that my father told me 20 years ago applied to me. In my graphomaniac's primer, which, and I'm just I'm completely in love with this book, because it's all handwritten, by the way, from beginning to end. Every moment of it is handwritten, including the editor's page, and drawn, and it's 120 pages, 116, and I'm very.
I'm laughing because the one that I got, this book keeps on getting bigger. It's I feel like the one that I have, I think had like 60 or 70 pages.
Yeah, well, there has to be more pages than that. And I'm very excited, about publishing it and then premiering it here, at the school, which is launching it. It's kind of a wonderful. It's a wonderful notion. But that kind of thing, like if you want to do something like that. But it's not if you want to do, because everybody in your life, you can do one thing like that. But the truth is, if you want to live your life like that, if your life is based on, it's like watching The Wire. I hated The Wire. I watched The Wire, and it's awful to hate The Wire because it was great acting, great directing, great writing, great producing, great camera. Every fucking thing about that show was great. Except the people living these lives. They're like the black people that you expect, that they, whoever they are, including us, expect to see. The cop. I don't know if you ever noticed that the only women who kill people in The Wire are lesbians. Did you know that? You watch it, you go, wow, because I watched it 3 times. Because it was so fucking good, and I hated it so much. But like what I want to do is like there was a guy I think it was in New York. He had an apartment, black guy, an apartment, and then he had like an empty apartment next door. You know how you get that happens, the old lady dies and nobody knows it died or something, and you just take it over. And he raised a lion in it. Like, I'm not talking like about a mountain lion. I'm talking about a real African lion. He raised this in an apartment in New York. An apartment in New York. He had an apartment, the lion had its own apartment. And he would put food through this door. Finally, the lion mauled a postman. And that's how everybody found out. But I'm saying, oh man, that's my kind of black man. It's like that black man had a lion. It was an African lion. He didn't get Indian tiger or shit. He had an African lion. He raised it, and like that guy, I want to see on television. Like I want to see. I'm not just interested in seeing. The images that we think we want to see. I like Idris Elba, but he should have a lion, next to him. I mean,
I think we're like, yeah, whatever he wants next to him, go ahead, put it next to him.
And the problem is, because they asked me to write on The Wire, so I said the same thing, right? They said, why? And I said, well, because I find it racist. And they said, well, it got better. It got better, in the following seasons. I said, so did George Wallace. That don't mean I have to like it. Motherfucker. It's like, well, I'm believing civil rights now. Yeah, right. I'm not fine, but just stay away from me. Stay away from my sister too.
Right.
I know what you're saying.
That's between you and your God.
Anyway, yes.
So, yes, you did the book, which helped you prove that you're, or helped you understand that you were a Grapplomaniac, but you produce a lot. I mean, and so, I'm seeing David nod in the audience, but I mean, you published 50 books, being an author, you didn't start when you were 18, right? I mean, so the amount of work that you produce is astonishing. I mean, the drawings, the play, you said, I'm going to write plays, and now, you've done it several times. Same with movies, same with television shows. How do you keep that up? I mean, how do you keep new ideas or fresh ideas, or just how do you produce that much?
You work every day. It's interesting, because, everybody here, well, maybe not everybody, hopefully not everybody, but everybody here has a job, right? And like
everyone here probably has a job.
And you've been doing that job for a long time. And of course, any job you have, they don't quantify what you've done, right? But you've done a whole lot, right? Hundreds of thousands of pages and emails and notes and projects and interviews and I mean, it goes on and on and on. All the stuff that you've done and all the stuff you had to learn how to do in order to keep your job. It's no different than that. It's just that I only do this, so and only doing that, and I do it 3 hours a day, 7 days a week, and and the more you do it, the better you get at it. I mean, it's true. It's not a physical thing. Like it's like running. The more you do it, the worse you get at it. Actually, but it's like, oh my God, my knee hurts. Oh, my neck hurts. It's from the running. My neck. I don't run with my neck. But yeah, you do. You just don't know. But so you know, I don't think it's all that unusual. I think that the difference is I work for myself, and most people work for somebody else. And in capitalism, we work for somebody else. They just take their labor. You know, it's like Marx said some very good things as long as being a philosopher, not a politician. Labor is theft. I do $20 worth of labor, and you give me $10. You know, that's a good day.
Right.
That's a good day. You know,
Right.
you know, I like when you're teaching a class in creative writing, and you got 15 students, every one of them paying $50,000 a year being in class, and they're paying you $2,500 a year.
A semester.
Yeah, and you're going like, hey man, where's my piece of this shit? You know, like, if it's capitalism, I should get a percentage. Say, you do. You get the rest.
Right. And be happy for it, and you feel lucky that you got it and that it comes with some benefits.
Even asking the question, you might get fired.
Yeah.
You know. But I think that's what I would say, that I don't work any more than anybody else. But what I produced has my name on it.
Right, so we see it and we
Yeah.
count it, and we, I mean, because you're right up there with, some of the, like I'm trying to think of some of the, who was that woman who had that huge, beautiful ring? And you were like, yeah, she's like probably one of the richest authors. What did she would write like V is for something or M is for.
Sue Grafton.
Yeah. I think that was her. I mean,
But there are people like Balzac, for instance, wrote 180 novels with a quill pen.
Right.
You know, Zola wrote 125. Simonal has 170. I mean, you can write a lot of books if you just sit there and write books all day. It's like, you know, I think, anything that you do that you make a commitment to, you're going to get better and better at, and you're going to accrue some kind of history. You know, I mean, you don't in capitalism because it belongs to them. Well, it belongs to us. We paid you for it, so it's ours.
Right. So my final question before we open it up to the audience is, what advice would you give, anyone, but also people who especially want to, become writers? I know you said there is no plan, or the plans don't necessarily always work out. But what advice would you give to young writers, older writers, people who just look at your life and think like, if I could get half of what Mosley got, man, I'd be doing it, or if I could have Mosley's life, what would
It depends on what you want. I mean, because a lot of people, like, when I started writing, like I said, the Californian starting to write, my thought was like I was going to write a finished short story. But like that was it. The short story was going to be finished. It was going to be there. And that would be it. I mean, it wasn't going to go anywhere. I was going to publish it. And so that's the first thing. And so it depends on what, like for instance, if you want to make money, you should go into real estate. Let's just be clear. Real estate is where, like, everyday people can make money. Did Donald Trump say, well, I went to my father, he lent me $1 million, and
which was a small loan, and you have to pay it back with interest.
Right, interest, 4%. But, so the first thing is what do you want? If you want to write, I mean, that's the first step. Then, well, you have to write every day. You have to write every day. Like, people come to me and they say, I'm a writer. And I say, oh, really? So what are you working on right now? So, well, I'm not working on anything right now. I say, well, so then you're not a writer right now. You were a writer a while ago, and you plan to be a writer in the future. But right now, you're just sitting here talking about being a writer. And I don't really say that to people, but I just think it. I work so hard. I said, what? So that the first thing is writing every day, and having a goal for yourself. And then after that, after you eat, really, the value, the impact on your life of writing every day is immense. It's just immense. It will change your life. When I say writing, I don't mean like writing in a journal. I mean like writing every day, like you're writing a novel, you're writing a short story, you're writing a poem or a collection of poems, you're writing a screenplay or a play, whatever it is, you're just writing it. A memoir, I don't care. Like, it's like who you are, what you're thinking, and you just write it until you get to the end. Because writing is rewriting. You go over again and again and again until it's finished. I have a book called This Year You Write Your Novel, which is applicable to any of those forms. You know, that you could get in the library. You don't have to buy it. You know, go get in the library and you can read it. And that's the first thing, to write every day. And that's the biggest thing. And then everything after that, you know, well, you know, it's up to the faith, what your talent is, what the audience is, what the, you know, what they are. You know, I mean, I don't really know after that. But you could do, once you can, you will not succeed if you do not commit yourself to the work. That's the one thing I know. So like, now, once you commit yourself to the work, you still might not succeed in the ways that you want to. But your life will be incredibly changed because you'll know things that you didn't know before. Really, I remember I was writing about Leonid McGill, and this guy, you know, Leonid McGill's a tough dude, you know, but this guy came in, he's like a giant, and he's just tough. He's beating the shit out of McGill, and McGill tries to hit him with a chair, and he swings it and misses, but the chair was not connected to the base, so it flew out and hit him, knocked him out. And McGill was so tired, he falls unconscious on the floor. And he wakes up, his lawyer, this small little porcelain-colored white guy, and the policeman, who's like a very kind of porcine, red-skinned guy, and the guy who tried to kill him, who's a kind of a darker white fellow. They're all standing there. And Leonid says, you know, I bet that they all think they're white people. But they're not related to each other at all. They don't look at all like each other. I had no idea he was going to say that. But ever since then, I keep thinking about it. I go, wow, it's true. There are no white people here. You know, and like that whole level of thought came from me writing from Leonid's point of view, Leonid seeing that thing, and then me saying, wow, that's really interesting. You know, but I mean, that's only a small moment of the amount that you can get out of writing. Because there's all these things, you know, most of our mind is unconscious, you know. And, you know, I mean, if you're really, really American, you say, well, I want to bring it all to consciousness, but that's crazy. And you'd be crazy if you did. You know? But the idea that the unconscious exists and that it can come out into your life, you have to do something to bring it out. Psychoanalysis is one of the ways to do it, you know, but it doesn't do anything else, so it's kind of silly because it's so expensive. But if you just do the same thing, if you paint every day, if you write every day, if you play the piano every day, you know, I met Thelonious Monk's son, who's Thelonious Monk II. Thelonious Monk's son said that his father some days would get up and play Bach for 8 hours. You know, he just play that Bach. And you know, listen, if you play Bach for 8 hours, you're bound to learn something. Bach knew some shit. You know, and it's like, you playing Bach, you go, wow, oh, wow, I see. Oh, God. You see that in Monk, right? You know, I gotta start doing circles now, man. Shit. So that was it. That was the last question. We're not going to ask them.
We're not going to ask them. Thank you, Walter. So I'd like to open it up to anyone in the audience for any questions. And I do have a couple more that I can throw out while we're waiting.
Yes,
wait, are we going to that point? Yes, go ahead. We'll do Ian first and then the gentleman behind Ian. Go ahead.
Thank you, Walter, for being here. Thank you, Malia. Thank you, Future Boss Alliance, Art Emerson. This is a great show. As a person who's always accountable of their words because they're a writer, and then as a black man, how do you find comfort expressing yourself as well, reaching your audience?
I don't quite understand the question.
Like, you're a writer, so I'm always constantly trying to say what I'm thinking at the same time appease my audience. What is your filter? How do we
Yeah, I don't try to appease them too much. You know, it's like
I just love the question, Walter. What is your filter?
you know, the thing about the filter. You know, when Humphrey Bogart made that movie, The African Queen. You know, it was before they could had all those green screens and stuff, so they had to actually go to Africa and be in a boat in Africa, and all the people in the boat got this intestinal distress, except for John Huston and Humphrey Bogart. Everybody was terribly sick, and the doctor came on the boat, and he went. You know, the people were upstairs in the boat. He went downstairs. He said, "The people up there." I said, "Yeah, I'm gonna go see something downstairs." And there was a filter the water downstairs, and it wasn't turned on. And he says, you know, you're drinking hippopotamus shit. You know, that's how come your intestines all so. And they said, but why didn't Humphrey and John get sick? I said, they only drink whiskey. So they didn't have to worry about it. You know, maybe they splash a little water in that whiskey, but you know, whiskey kills hippopotamus. But no, I don't, you know? In the rewriting process, you know, you might take things out, but mostly it's aesthetic or logic things, you know? But you have to say what you believe, and you have to say what you believe your characters would say, you know? And if you don't do that, every time you take something out or like, you know, filter something, you're going to lose part of yourself. So I try my best not to. It's not that I never do it, but I try my best not to, because the audience. I'm not trying to say I'm trying to educate the audience, but you know, the audience. You know, if you're reading a book, then you have to try to understand that book, or if you're listening to music, you have to understand that music. You know. So that's how I answer it. You know, I've been told I shouldn't say many things.
Please, sir.
Let me start by saying that I attended a reading of Breath. It's a play that Walter wrote, and for those of you who don't know, there's another reading this week. Is it tomorrow night?
Tomorrow night.
You should break your neck to be there. Yeah, it's an amazing experience. I actually got to watch Walter respond as his words came out of other people's mouths. And so I want to ask you what it feels like when you have that moment, and how does it change your perception of what you've written?
Well, you know, I mean, the other night, you know, watching Breath, it changed, you know, because it plays at an early state, really, even though I wrote it quite a while ago, I haven't changed it much. And, you know, I saw where it needed to, you know, be better, but I also saw where, you know, it actually said what I wanted it to say, and it said things about the world I live in that I believe, you know, and seeing that and hearing that. And of course, you know, it's, you know, to see the place for black men all over the age of 60 who happen to be in the same room in a hospital in Manhattan, which is really impossible. It's not impossible because it's based on a true story. That, you know, to see how different, you know, like, you know, because in my life I know that, you know, we're different, you know, black men. You know, we're not all the same guy, you know, standing at you know, different relationship to the camera. You know, we're all really different people, and seeing that in the play made me very happy. You know, very happy to see, you know, how we act and how we react, and how funny we are. You know, it made me pleased, and also, you know, I was happy to see it so I can, you know, work on the play and make it better.
Ma'am.
You seem to be a very independent thinker, and I'm wondering, where do you think the seeds of that are? It doesn't seem that the education system took it out of you, or didn't allow it to take it out of you. It's hard for me. I'm looking at what I think of the stereotypical computer programmer. It's hard for me to imagine you in that setting. So
Do you know a lot of computer programmers? Because they're crazy. They're really crazy. They're like people who don't want to fit. Like, it was an example of the fact that I didn't want to fit that I became a computer programmer, actually, especially back then in the 70s. But beyond that, you know, my mother was is Jewish. She was an only child. Was an only child, and you know came from those immigrants who didn't have race about, you know, black and white people. It just didn't exist. You know, they weren't white people, and black people, you know, they'd just never seen it before. That's her side. My father, and my mother was an only child. My father, his mother died when he was 7. His father disappeared, probably died when he was 8. And he was on his own from that point on. And being on his own made his approach to life very different than most of the people, you know, in his kind of extended family. You know, they had a home and an anchor, and my father was always searching for something else, you know. And when he hooked up with my mother, they were like, started searching together for something else, because, you know, she was also a socialist. Luckily, I didn't have my criticism of socialism back then. And I really kind of believe that the way that they approach life, even though they never articulated it, helped me to think differently about this. You know, they were not, you know, they were not really worried about stuff. You know, they were very, very much independent thinkers in their own rights.
Please.
Hi, I'm Karina, and I just finished reading one of your books, and sometimes I wonder about you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really curious about your relation, you're shaping your women characters and the main, in this case, Tolstoy's relationships to the 5 or 6 women he's involved with. And you have a very different concept about family and commitment in terms of these relationships. And so it seems to me like, you know, the relationships really don't have, so when you think about a commitment that goes along a certain path, but you don't have that. It just seems to me it's more about the experience. It's almost like a relationship with women collage as opposed to this is going somewhere.
Well, also with his kids.
So I'm just curious about
Also with his
how
kids.
you view the main character's relationship with women and what you're trying to do,
Well,
having all these different.
I'm uncomfortable with saying women because it's like it's Leonid's relationship with everybody. His father, for instance, in that book. His children, like, you know, he has 3 kids, but his wife tells him that he fathered, you know, all of them, but he only fathered one. He knows it, and he loves them anyway. His relationship, I think, in general, follows a different path than most people's relationships in life do. He's there. He's, you know, paid the rent. He's been married to this one woman in this, you know, in a way, loveless marriage for, you know, 20 years. But that's not an issue for him. That's, you know, he says, I'm here, and, you know, when I'm here, and when I'm somewhere else, I'm there, you know. And that's, you know, seeing Lenin in his life, especially his relationship with his father, who he thought was dead most of his life up until this book, it's kind of what you would expect out of him, you know. He's, you know, very much the same way. Though, you know, he has children that he's adopted. They're not his kids, but he loves them very much, and he would do anything to keep them alive. But that's what's important, you know. You know, and, you know, this is not true for all characters in all books, but it is true, I think, in the 3 major series that I've done. Yeah. But why? I don't know. It's like, you know,
I'm just curious about is it an exploration, and what's the exploration?
Well, it's no more an exploration than my life is one. You know, we live in a place where, you know, I mean, relationships. I mean, it's just our relation. I always talk to people. Say, you know, I used to when I give political talks, I would say, who's the most important person in your life? I said, don't answer it. Just think. And then we talk for a while longer, and I come back and I say, well, who's the most important, you know, person in your life? And people go, my grandmother, my mother, my sister, my brother, my father, my dog. You know, there's a whole bunch of, you know, my children, you know. And I said, well, you know, those are the people you love. But the most important person in your life is the person that signs your paycheck. You may never even meet this person, but that person is the most important person in your life. The reason I know it's true is because you could lose a wife, a child, a dog, or a grandmother, and you don't have to replace them. Your grandmother dies, you don't say, I need a new grandmother. You know, your wife leaves with your best friend, you don't say, I need a new best friend or a new wife. It's just, my wife left with my best friend. All right, shit, that's fucked up. Who's signing my paycheck? When the guy stops signing your paycheck, you got to go find a new person to sign your paycheck. Tomorrow. Really, I know we're not, we don't think that, you know, people argue against it, they fight about it, but the truth is, yeah, you got to.
Because it kind of hurts when you put it like that. I'm like thinking about my grandma right now, and
Well, your grandma's, it's like, one day she'll die, and you love her. She's like, great, and you may not ever love anybody as much as your grandmother, but you don't need a new grandmother. You don't even want a new grandmother.
no.
But like,
And she's not leaving me anything, so it's not like I can lose the boss when she goes.
it's that like that kind of, and I think that I think a lot of my characters think like me, and that thought is, kind of, there. I said, well, what's the most important thing, and it's not necessarily what it seems. Not, if you disagree with me, you disagree with me. I don't have to be right, but it is what I'm thinking. It's like it is a thing where you think, wow, yes. What you look next to you and say, what if she did leave me? Well, Jimi Hendrix says, her sister will, but but the truth is, her sister doesn't have to.
Right.
Yes. Oh, excuse me.
One of the things to what you were talking about, a lot of people don't want to think about the hunger, that we are mortal, and that we eat a meal, as time passes, we get hungry. Mm-hmm. And if we don't get that food in, if we don't take that next breath, we can't stay here. And so we have to do something. That's all tied up with the paycheck.
Yeah.
You've got to get that paycheck. Yeah. But anyway, you said something about class that I thought was the most incredible thing. I think you said it in the Nation. I read it. Mm-hmm. And it was something about, everyone talks about, there's middle class, there's upper class, there's lower class. And you defined it in a way of how long you could keep your standard of, why don't you enumerate it?
Okay, you want me to repeat it?
Yes.
Everybody in America says they're in the middle class. You ask them, they're in the middle class. Everybody, they're in the middle class. Obama says, I want to protect the middle class. I said, so you want to protect 8% of the country? What? But he pretends that, like everybody else pretends, like, 80% of the country is middle class. But in truth, the difference between the middle class and working class is this. If you're in the middle class, you lose your job. You have a year or two that you can live off your portfolio. It doesn't have to be a big one, $100,000, $300,000 in the portfolio. And you can still go to the same restaurants, still donate to the same charities, still send your kids to the same schools, fine. But after 2 years, something should happen. You're going to get in trouble. Working class, 2 weeks. 2 weeks. And your kids are in city college, you're eating at McDonald's, you sell the mortgage on your house, and then you start to rent an apartment. That's the way it is. It's like, that's how the identity, and I make the argument because we need to identify with the working class, not with the middle class. Once you identify with the middle class, you say, well, I'm part of the big part of the country. I'm part of the successful part of the country because I'm middle class, but you're not. You don't own your house. You don't own shit. My generation, I'll be 64 in the beginning of the year. My generation, the average savings is $20,000. And believe me, that's all in about like 5% of it. Everybody else has nothing. I got lots of friends who have $1 million. I have very few who have as much as 20,000. It's like it's like there's
a lot of zero.
That we're living in a life that we're struggling to make it by and pretending that we're not.
It reminds me of that stat that I was telling you about in Boston. You were like, that's the criminal stat, where 6% of white people in Boston live below the poverty line, but 24% of African Americans live below the poverty line. And it was just, when we were talking about, has Boston changed since the last time we did this year? It's one of those stats that I feel like our city should really sit with for a minute, especially with the way we talk about our progressiveness. There was a question up here, yes?
Yeah, I think it's probably now less of a question, but just your ideas about capitalism. I think about it a lot, and I think about how we're all in service to one another. I'm at the mall, and I'm looking at all these shoes that people need to wear, and jars of peanut butter, and how they get there, and so I'm going to stop, because it's just something that has been very...
Well, it's very important to be aware of it. It's like racism. Like to say if you believe in the color scheme, then you are a racist. you can't really defeat it. But if you think about it enough, you know, answers actually after a while begin to occur. You know, answers, you know, you'll have answers that, you know, will be, you know, different than his, but, or mine, but that's okay, because, you know, slowly, you know, through those answers, we can begin a dialogue. What if?
Before I came here, it's not the right answers, it's the right questions.
Yeah.
Answered and asked. Because there's answers all over the place, but your thinking pushes the questions. And your talk this afternoon is pushing a lot of questions.
Yeah, I think it's very important to like to think, and which is why it's really good, important to write, because it's hard to have advancement of thinking in like just in your head, you know, like okay, and then not this, not that. But if you write it and then you like, you know, go over it again and again and again, then it finds a place in your head, and also it's written down someplace. You can turn to that page and say, wait a second, I wrote it right here, you know, and say it. So it's you know, I mean, that's what Karl Marx did. He sat in a library for 30 years, and you know, wrote Capital and all the books that came after it, and you know, very important. Misused books, you know, a lot by psychoanalysis, but still very, very important.
Yes, please in the back, and then we'll come down to the front.
You said there are certain books that you've written that you can't find a publisher for.
Yeah.
Have you read a book recently that was published and you're amazed that it got published? In the same way you may be on a subject that people don't want to hear the truth about. Has there been a book published that told the truth and you're like, wow, it got published?
Well, I think that, you know, it depends on, you know, a lot of times it happens that we're in capitalism, so if you specialize in writing the kind of books that they won't publish in mine, those books will get published. Like one of them's literary. If John Updike had written that book, it would have gotten published. You know, the political one, you know, if like one of the, you know, the accepted political writers wrote that book, they would
Like
get
Paul
published.
Pagala wrote it or something.
But, you know, so, you know, that's one thing. So, you know, I mean, I understand they said, well, you know, you can't have these thoughts, you're a mystery writer. You're a mystery writer. I was once with Toni Morrison at this event, and a woman came up with this other woman, and she said, I want to introduce Toni Morrison, the novelist, and Walter Mosley, the mystery writer. And I said, I'm a novelist. She said, yes, mystery writer. And I said, and we went back and forth. It was so funny, because you wouldn't change it. You know, you are a mystery writer. Stop. I'm trying to get her to talk to Tony. She's a fucking novelist, and she did it. You know, it's like, but you know, it's that thing. You know, well, you're not this kind of writer. You can't understand these kinds of things. And the people who read the book, they don't understand it. So they say, I don't get it, you know, and I have no confidence that you can do it, so I'm not going to publish it. But yeah, listen, these things don't work on me, you know. And anybody who gets published, I'm happy, no matter how bad the book is. I'm glad. I said, good for you. If you get a book published, good for you. I'm not going to read it, but
Industry
good.
law.
Yeah.
We're going to go out in front, I think, yes.
I do. What do you say in your life brings in the most inspiration that you use for your writing? And what are your remarks on self-doubt as a writer?
The inspiration, there's no inspiration, it's just, you know, I write every day. You know, so like, in writing supports itself, right? The more you write, the more you write, and like, that's fun.
So is there a key part in your life that you really just draw inspiration from? Like, is there like a day or
No.
a time frame in your life where
No, I mean, there's a lot of like, you know, stupid things I did, you know, that find their way into my books, and that other people do, but you know, but not really. No, it's not. It's not a moment, you know, like wow. What was the second part of that question?
your remarks on self-doubt?
What do you mean by that? I find it so
Because
interesting.
me being an artist myself, sometimes I feel where I don't think my art, or I don't think myself, I can put myself project myself as much as I really fully can. Even though that is self-doubt for me, but I would like to know, what would your remarks be, since you've been writing, since you've been exercising your mind every day with your writing, what would your remarks on self-doubt be to conquer that, and or push that to the side, and or what helps push you past that bar, past that wall?
I have a friend who's she was a very successful, very well-known poet. And she was thinking about writing these poems. She said, I have these poems, I want to write them, but I can't. And I said, how come? She goes, it's about my daughters. And if my daughters were to read this and to see me saying these things at this point in their life, I'm worried of its impact on them. And I said, what, they read your journals? And she goes, well, no, but if they got published. I said, yeah, but they're not published now. When you're writing the poem, you're just writing the poem. So write the poem. You don't have to show them to your kids. You don't have to, using your word, project them into the world. You do have to project them, wherever your art is, on the canvas, on the page, whatever. But, the thing is that shipper sitting on your shoulder, it doesn't have anything to do with what's happening in your studio, your room, in the library, So, I mean, that's what I always think. I'm just writing, and it's just going on, and it's not perfect. And not only is it not perfect, it's never going to be perfect. But I'm just gonna keep doing it and working it and writing it and expressing it and entering into that dialogue. If it gets published, great. If it doesn't get, by the time that it comes around getting published, I don't have the self-doubt anymore. You know what I mean? And she didn't either. I mean, it was like, the kids don't want to read her poetry, should. It's like, come on now. Like, you think I'm sitting around here reading poetry? Well, smile. It's like, it's like, but that's the thing, like the weight on your head. I mean, sometimes you can't get rid of it. I mean, really, honestly, but the weight on your head often is not exactly the thing that you're dealing with. If you're worried about criticism, well, you have to show it to somebody to get criticized.
Any other? Yes.
Would you ever self-publish or publish under a pseudonym to get out some of the work the publishing house will publish?
I don't think I'll do a pseudonym. I don't think so. And going to Paul Coates is kind of like self-publishing. I just say, Paul, you publish my book? He goes, yeah, all right. He edits it, so it's, in a way, it's not self-publishing. It's a real press. So. The thing is, I'm not really worried about it. I like to say it to people because there are parts of my voice that are muted. And so I like people to know, I keep trying, keep doing it, But I'm not worried about it. Sooner or later I'll get published. Or it won't, and that'll be okay. I think the most important thing about writing is writing. And it's like being a painter, Van Gogh sold, one painting his entire life, But he's the most important painter in like 300 years. It's like you just are what you are. You do what you do, and that's fun. Yep. Hey.
So I wanted to ask you about Afrofuturism. I hope no one else has yet.
No, they didn't ask.
Okay. So your name has popped up as an Afrofuturist writer.
Yeah.
And I wanted to hear about your relationship with that, what you thought about Afrofuturism as a movement, as an aesthetic, and how your work fits in, or how that fits into your work.
Well, it fits in because I write science fiction, and alternative fiction. I've written like 14 books of it, really. Nobody knows that, especially people in the science fiction world. But I've written all these books. I love writing it. Because the only future, when you watch something like Star Wars, especially the first Star Wars that came out back in the 70s, there was not only were there no black people, there weren't even people with brown hair or brown eyes in it. It was like blonde-haired, blue-eyed, people from Earth. And look, he's married to a black woman, but still, shit, man. He's like, I don't want no niggas in my future. If we're gonna have a future, we got to make up that future. We have to create that future. And and it's like Afrofuturist is all the black scientists, from George Washington Carver, to that guy who synthesized the pill. I forgot his name, the chemist. To the guy McCoy who made that perfect steam engine. you know, the real McCoy, you know. Like those are all Afrofuturists, especially since nobody knows that they were there. The guy with blood plasma, who, you know, who isolated blood plasma so we could, you know, do, transfusions. Yeah. It's like, we're like filled with like people thinking about and creating a future. And I think that that's so important for us, you know, to hold that future. You know, I would say, like, you know, like if you're a radical lesbian feminist separatist and you're going to write a novel, it should be a science fiction novel. And the science fiction novel said, in the year 2022, there were no men left on the surface of the earth. And then you have a problem. So what do you do now? Okay, fine. What happens then? You know, how do you have children? What do you deal with male children? Maybe you don't have male children. You figured that out. You know, whatever it is, you know, that becomes a very, you know, that's a way that you can actually deal specifically with your future. You know, and so, you know, and it's my love of science fiction. I just think it's great. You know, and I've always thought it was great. You know, we were talking about comic books earlier. You know, I love comic books. I love the notion of creating a world. For me, Spider-Man was always a black man. You know, that's why he wore that mask that covered his whole head and his neck. Nobody know he's a black man. Can't pay the rent. You know, comes from a single mother home, but it's really a grandmother aunt home. He takes pictures of himself as Spider-Man so he can be vilified in the newspaper with those pictures. You know, I mean, it's crazy. It's like being, you know, like a young black man in America. You know, and I just, you know, but the story is great. You know, you tell the story, and then we see ourselves, and then we can deal with what we see. You know, and so like that. You know, that's, you know, what I think about it. Is why I keep writing, you know, science fiction, even though, you know, it doesn't do all that very well. I don't care. You know, it's if I want to make money, like I said, I go into real estate.
Speaking of the science fiction, are you going to continue like the 2-in-1s, the Head on the Pen or like Gift of Fire? Will you have any more of those coming out?
I don't think I'm going to have any more of those, but you know, I'm going to write, you know, other books, but you know, I'm finished those. Yeah, I did, the last one was a silver box, inside a silver box. That was fun, you know, and you know, it's fun to do those. It's fun to write those books, you know. I mean, science fiction has changed a lot, you know. A lot of people kind of look at my work and say, I don't get it, you know. But that's okay. I don't mind, you know.
Are there any last questions? Yes, ma'am.
What are you reading lately?
I have been reading science fiction, you know. I mean, I've been reading, you know, Michael Moorcock and Brian Aldiss lately, you know. It's like, it's kind of going, I mean, I think Aldiss is such a great writer, you know, and it's just, you know, and it's amazing how he reconfigures. I was just reading the 9 billion names for God. It's like, you go, wow, man, you know, it's like, I wrote that in like 54, I think, you know. It's just these monks who are like, they figured out an alphabet, and only those 9 letters could be God, could name God, and now that they thought it was going to take them 15,000 years to name God, but now that we have computers, it's only going to take them 6 months. You know? And so it's so cool. You know, it's just like, you know, it's the way we think, you know, when we're not being governed. You know, we think beyond our own reality, which is, you know, one of the human things. And good science fiction is like, you know, it helps us reconfigure the world.
All right, well, let's give Walter a round of applause. Thank you so much for being in Boston for the week. And for the next 10 days, we just love having your voice. And as you can see, I think it's some different type of thinking that would be interesting for us to do in this city. So we're happy to have you, Walter, and we hope you enjoy your stay here. Thank you, and thank you, everyone.